This workshop is documenting and archiving student work for the COVID-19 era. It was previously titled Technology for Teaching Artists if you registered earlier. But thank you again for joining us today. My name is Kinsey Keck, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white person with short brown hair and large green framed glasses, and I am wearing a blue and white plaid shirt, and I have a window with my plant shelf behind me. I am the programming and membership manager for the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. The Roundtable is a grassroots service organization that works to improve and advance the state of arts education through professional development workshops, advocacy, and online resources and platforms to connect the arts education field. Although we are currently meeting via an online platform right now, the Roundtable would like to take a moment and acknowledge that we work and live on stolen land. The Canarsie, Lenape, Munsee, and Wapinger people who once lived here are part of the history of what we call New York City. We'd like to give a moment of respect to them, as well as to the Black and immigrant communities which have helped build the city that we know today. As we travel in their footsteps, we recognize that all of our histories are intertwined. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. If you're having trouble with Zoom, please refer to the one sheet that was forwarded to you with the login information for today's call, and I can pop a link to that in the chat box right now as well, just in case you need it. There you are. Please remember to keep your mic setting on mute unless you are the person who is speaking. If you're calling in from a phone number, you can mute and unmute yourself by pressing *6. We encourage you to use the chat box function to ask questions, share resources, and connect with other participants during this workshop. The chat box transcript will be saved and shared in a follow-up email after the session. This call does include closed captioning. To activate that setting, please click the little arrow next to the closed captioning button and select Show Subtitles in your toolbar. And that same menu is a subtitle setting, so you can adjust the size of your captions there. And this session will be recorded. So we will post the recording on our website, YouTube, and Vimeo channels. We will also aggregate any resources that are shared during this session, including the PowerPoint that our presenters are going to be working from. That will be shared to you in a follow-up email within a week after this call. I think that's it for announcements. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to our fantastic facilitators today from the Q Art Foundation. They are Phyllis Yao and Amanda Adams-Louis.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Adams-Louis. I am the lead art educator with the Q Art Foundation. I am also a photographer, cultural producer, and art school college counselor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Phyllis. I am the co-teacher, or more like, I'm the co-teacher at Q Art Foundation for the Q Teen Collective. I am a visual arts artist. I work mainly in painting. And it's really nice to see everyone today. I like that there is already so much conversation happening in the chat.
Yes, that's The Simpsons. So thank you, everybody, for coming. I am going to do a quick screen share and start the presentation. So also, thank you all for responding to the polls and giving us a sense of who's in the room. It really helps us to sort of tailor things as much as we can in the moment to your specific challenges, questions, curiosities around documenting student artwork and also storing the content that you capture. We copy the slide from Instagram. So it's the same thing, documenting student artwork in the COVID area, technology for teaching artists. You're in the right workshop. I wanted to start out with our agenda today, and I am playing the screen share game. So if you can't see anything, let me know. But please try to bear with me. I tried to format everything so it's within the box, in the bounds. So we are going to give you an overview of how we organize, strategize, and plan out what we document, and also how we store and publish our student artwork. The Q Art Foundation, just kind of a brief overview, is a art foundation dedicated to supporting the artwork and the careers of emerging and underserved artists. And one of its signature programs is the Q Teen Collective, and that's a 7-month arts education program and a residency for high school age youth. And I'm going to go through a couple of slides of their work as I talk about the program. The purpose of the program is to give high school age sophomore to seniors an idea of what it means to be a working fine visual artist in New York City. So we have students meet with different members of the art world: curators, gallerists, dealers, auction house specialists, conservators, working artists working in a bunch of different fields and mediums. So they get a sense of what it means to not only make art, but to sell, to publish, to write about it, to distribute it, to negotiate it, to represent it at auction, to represent it in an art fair. And they get a sense of the way that art is discussed and sold and bought. And then in this winter and the spring, the students are actually tasked with developing a concept and an idea for a group exhibition and creating unique and original bodies of work that speak to the theme of the exhibition. Students additionally are asked, and this is where the documentation and the tracking and the content, and where we've sort of developed a really robust workflow over the past 4 years that we're going to be sharing with you today. And what you're seeing now is student produced content. We asked them to submit headshots, biographies, artist statements, and to give us caption text. So that's the artist's, the size, the dimensions, the year, the materials, and the media used to produce a work of art. And we feature these on our website. And we also, this year, due to COVID and the shutdown, created an online gallery using Exhibit for our students. And here's a title slide from the Exhibit gallery. And it was held between June and August 2020, and it featured some students from the 2019-2020 Q Teen Collective cohort. And we were able to put this together when we realized we wouldn't be able to have an exhibition in person. And because of the way that we organize and document our student work, it was easy to incorporate having an online exhibition with about maybe a month and a half, 2 months notice into our workflow and our program activities. This is a kind of a gallery view of the students' work on the walls, and what it looks, and kind of the view that you'd get if you'd visited the show. This is a detail shot from the show with student caption text and student work. And here is a larger version of the same image that was photographed. The work was produced by the student and they've documented it as well. And then here's another example of student work that we have. We hold online critiques and we use Google Photos as our housing archive for student work, for critiques and different assignments that we do in class with young people. And then here's kind of a final example. This is from an alumni of the Q Teen Collective program. And it's this work, she actually just emailed it to me a couple of days ago. And this is part of one of my former students' college portfolio. She's applying to a couple of visual art BFA programs, and she wanted some feedback on her work. And she sent me not only her work, but its captions and short descriptions of each piece. And we've talked about it. She's told me in passing a lot of the skills that we taught her around the significance of documenting your work, creating a strategy for organizing and backing up and archiving your work, as well as being able to caption it and think clearly about what you mean to say and the message you want to communicate through your work, and recording it and building upon that has helped her through the college application process. So our work with documenting, categorizing, and archiving student work is important to Q as an institution in our program, but it also teaches students lessons and skills that they can take with them beyond our program and apply to their own college and career. So I'm going to jump into my portion. I will be facilitating the portion around the back end, the educator's workflow. So the process that Phyllis and I use to structure, organize, archive, back up, track student work, and also our own documentation of the program and our colleagues' documentation. And I'll get into how all these things work together, the apps that we use, the systems, and there's a couple of charts that I have for you guys that I hope are helpful to you. This is a specific process to our program, but I think there are many things that are very universal for teaching artists who are working with writers, with performers, with musicians, with dancers, with craftspeople, with people making puppets and new media. And I think it's very applicable because at the end of the day, if students are making something that can be visually shown, there's a process that you need to have to record it, either using still or moving images that we hope to share with you today. So with that said, I'm going to hop into it. All right, so I'm going to begin with a series of outlines and lists that we created, and I just realized it got dark, daylight savings, that we use to structure how we think about what we document, how we store the content that we document, and also how we publish and circulate student work. So I'm beginning with two lists. The list on the left is a list of all of the aspects of the program, the Q-Teen Collective, that we document. And the list on the right is a list of where we store the content that we document. And the different ways we have of storing it and also publishing and circulating it. I'm going to move forward to the next slide. And this, as somebody said something about a list of kind of consistently tracking their student artwork and content, and this is what we use and how we think about it. I'm hoping that the things at the bottom will disappear, but I'm just going to give you a brief overview of this. So on the left, we have the description of the content. So we obviously photograph every class, and now that we're meeting through Zoom, we also record all of the guest lectures and we upload them onto Google Classroom so that our students are able to see them if they want to revise them, or if they were absent and wanted to just catch the guest lecture, the studio visit. A big part of the program is the exhibition, so we feel it's important to document all aspects of the installation process, the students putting the work, deciding where it goes on the walls, designing the exhibition, as well as the work on the walls in an empty gallery. So students have that resource available, and we also have it in our archive. We hold a final reception, and that's a great opportunity to get a group portrait. And just a tip, if you are interested in kind of taking portraits of your group, as a photographer, I find when you have culminating events and celebrations, that's a great time. People are happy, they're celebrating, to get your students, your young people, your coordinators, your teachers, and their families even together for a portrait. So we try to build that into our final reception. And then the items, on the 4 items on the bottom, the artwork, the final exhibition series, student headshots, and caption text are all deliverables that we train and model and teach our students how to produce and how to submit to us. And my colleague Phyllis is going to go into that as she does the student workflow portion. But I wanted to include them on this documentation outline so you get a sense of how everything works together and how we're thinking about the totality of what we need to document and how we've determined the media types that we want to use to document the different aspects of our program, and then also who's responsible for documenting it. Because I find one of the biggest problems with documentation is who's responsible for documenting it, for uploading it, for making sure that once the files have been captured, that they're going into a consistent place and being organized and aggregated together. And that's why we also have our storage location. And we indicate kind of where our primary place where we put things, but also the secondary and backup locations and the publishing and how we circulate the work. If there's any clarifying questions about this slide or what I've mentioned so far, I'm happy to take them now. I know it's a lot of dense information. If not, I shall move on. All right. So the next part is, once we've determined how we want to document where, who's responsible, where it's going, we hone in on where and how we're actually placing our content, and which aspects, in this case, Google is our primary storage of the Google application suite that we are using to document particular aspects of our documentation as educators and as in our administrators' documentation, but also the work that our students are producing. So with that in mind, I'd say the big highlights are we use Google Drive as our administrative storage, and we do not share Google Drive folders with students. Instead, we make sure that all student work is put onto Google photo albums. There's, sorry, the sound sort of threw me off a little bit. So we share links with our students using Google Classroom, and we specifically identify the different content that we want to capture from students. We label it, we put the due date on the folder, and we share that with students so they know what's due, where, and where they're uploading it. And that's the best way that we've developed to track and organize student work. In terms of capturing student biographical information or caption information, if students are producing a short piece or a monologue, or if they're singing a work, or if they've written and narrated a short story or a film, we find Google Forms is the best way to do that, because that's a way to track through a class of 10, 15, 25, 35 student information and student caption information around particular artworks that are different for each student, but that have to respond to the same questions. And Phyllis is going to show you exactly what that looks like in her part of the presentation. I just wanted to outline it for you all. Google Classroom is our central hub for communicating with students and sharing information and links, and teaching them and giving them the resources to understand the documentation process, and also the storage, submission, content, and uploading process. So this is the primary part of how we back up our storage and the content that we document and the content that our students produce that we want to archive and capture. The second part is backup and publishing. So our primary backup is the QArt Foundation server. And then in terms of publishing, we do that in two ways. We have a robust archive of student work and the program on QArt Foundation's website. And we also produce annual catalogs that coincide with our final exhibition. And we issue that for that. And that is high quality images of student work, their biographies, and their captions. So if all of the cloud storage disappears one day, we still have a robust record of not only student exhibitions, but also the group and the open calls through Q. And they have a wonderful catalog publishing production process that's very, very helpful in creating a secondary archive. I think one of the most important things about documentation is having multiple copies of the same information in different places that can't be compromised. So if Google servers crash, or if for some reason one's external hard drive is damaged, destroyed, lost, if you have a print copy of it, that's something that you can also keep. If the print copy is destroyed, you have the cloud copy. So having multiple copies of the same information across different types of storage and backup, I find is really, really important when you are making and producing content with students. And explaining this to students, showing them this is also a big part of the journey. Additionally, myself and Phyllis also have our own archives, and we encourage students to create and develop. And usually they do this with Google Drive and Google Photos. Some of them have other types of cloud storage or external hard drives or flash drives that they use to circulate and store their work.
Hey, Amanda, a
Yes.
question came in the chat. Do you provide the educators with storage? Google Drive has been an issue with some teaching artists that are using their personal accounts.
Good question. So in this case, myself and Phyllis actually have email addresses and our own Google accounts through QArt Foundation's organization-wide G Suite account, if that makes sense. So we don't use our personal accounts, we use the organization accounts. I'd advise people that do not have the ability or the type of relationship where they're able to get a separate Google's profile on an organizational G Suite account. And if you're a working artist, this also is sort of a tax thing in terms of receipts and tracking the expense, but I think it is worth the expense of creating a personal G Suite domain with the attendant apps, so that you're able to create your own Google Classroom classes and Google photo albums that you're able to send and circulate throughout your own Google domain universe. So I'd say first to try to work with the organization to see if you're able to get your own account through the G Suite, so you can create your Google Classroom, your Google photo albums, use the Google Drive storage, because these are all also expenses and costs that are associated with having a unique G Suite account. But if you are a teaching artist that works in a particular way where you prefer to be independent, that's also a good option. And this is where it's sort of personal circumstances fall in as well. And sometimes I think with certain organizations, it's a matter of educating them and telling them about the benefits of including you as a teaching artist or an educator working with that organization into their G Suite universe.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Did I answer your?
Yes, you definitely answered my question. Thank you.
Cool. But yeah, I tried to sort of mix the specific with the general. So this is the different ways we back up and restore, and all of this, the organization, the workflow would not be possible without our collaborators. So I wanted to sort of outline the different roles that they play in this process, because I think it's also important when you're setting up a documentation process to consider the different people that are involved with making and producing content. And who's going to manage, because management is a key component of maintaining a documentation system. Who's going to update, add, relabel, refile, make sure that an event or an episode or a sharing out is captured, and then who's also going to connect to if there's an organizational server to back up to, or other ways of backing up the work. And then also in terms of the publishing catalogs, the online gallery, and the website are the three ways in which our administrative colleagues at Q are invaluable. Thank you, Lily and Josephine, in maintaining our workflow and our system of publishing, capturing, and backing up. And then in terms of our young people, this process is in service of them, their work, their ideas, and making sure that they are preserved. And that they're preserved on an institutional level, but also preserved so that at any point 10 years from now, if the students want or need to access the work they did or reference the title of the exhibition they were in or any role they played, that information is ready and available to them. And they were part of that being so. In addition to people, we have software and apps that we use to document and capture and facilitate. A lot of these apps are very common, so I'm going to kind of hone in on two that I think are a lot less common that I like to share with the group. Screencastify. Screencastify is wonderful for recording the work that you do on screen. So if you're working in digital media or even visual arts, and you want to model a process for students, or you want to record a short video of yourself explaining things to students, or if you want students to respond to a question or assignment through a short video of them talking, Screencastify is a great way to do this. In this case, we use Screencastify to record a welcome video for students that we selected to interview to join the Fall 2020 Q-Teen Collective cohort. I also, in my other work as a teaching artist, use Screencastify to show students how to use digital media programs, different drawing techniques, critique. So it's a really helpful app. It's free, and it works as an addition to your web browser. The other application that I think has been significant and kind of came out of nowhere is Exhibit, and that's the virtual gallery, that virtual online platform that we use to create a gallery online that replicated the look and feel somewhat of an in-person gallery, but existed totally online. And it's Exhibit, I'd say, is a platform that is user-friendly. It's about a 6-step process of organizing your content, putting in your text, and manipulating it and choosing it around the screen. Those of you that do host culminating events that had to be canceled in public, this is a great way to sort of flip it and do it online, and also have your students included in the process. I've had the experience of planning out a gallery this way with students, and it's really, really fun, and their insight and comments are different than I expected. So I'd recommend that as a way to showcase student work. And this also works with multiple art forms that are able to be displayed visually. ISTU is also great in the sense that it's our mechanism for publishing our catalogs. So I've gone through the overview of how we think and organize what we document, how we organize what we document, and also how we publish and share student work and create an archive of it. Were there any questions so far about that part? Anything that anybody want me to go back through and clarify before I jump into the next portion? All right, I'm gonna move on. All right, so up next, I'm going to give you guys what I call a storage and publishing tour and show you how we organize our content and how we structure it and how we keep it going from year to year, because this is what you see now is a result of 4 years of work and structure and tweaking and upgrades and updating and what have you. All right. So what you see on here is 2 screenshots of Q Teen's Google Drive. The one at the top, this one shows the way that we organize all of our folders by year. So the program is annual. We go from October to May. So we title them and organize them by year, so we have a clear sense of what year it is and what's happening. In terms of our specific documentation, we break the year down into different seasons. So that's why it's structured by the seasons, as you see on the bottom. And then we separate out the final exhibition, because that's also another set of content, ideas, texts, graphics that we're having students produce that we want to separate from the classroom and regular activities and homework content. And that's how we do it in this case. And then up here, I included a bit of the workflow. So this documentation folder lives within the greater 2020-2021 Q admin folder. So this is the general way that we organize and structure our Google Drive. And then this is a thumbnail view of a similar folder where we've got the installation images of students' work up at the Clemente Center this fall, and some student work live up close. This is our Google Drive. Phyllis is going to go way more into it, but I just wanted to connect it to our greater workflow on Google. And this is where we communicate the different content that we want to capture to the students. We communicate the deadlines and what we want. As you see, we're pretty clear and have a robust set of deliverables and deadlines. And we also have links and references and resources. So this is also an archive, because we keep these classrooms and we copy them from year to year and update. So we already have a sense of the structure, the assignment, the submissions, the instructions. And this is also a good way to archive the documentation aspect of working with students and how you communicate what you need from them to them in a consistent way. And do not have to reinvent the wheel every year. Lastly, this is our Google Albums queue, and this is a list of the different albums and artwork that we collect from students. And we make this available to students, administrators, and staff, so we're all on the same page and able to comment and share feedback on each other's work. I'm going to click on. So lastly, I just wanted to share with you guys our website. This is the Arts Education Q-Teen Collective page, which is a good summary and contains picture and information, and also all of our exhibitions. So this is the exhibition the year before last, Persistence of Memory, exhibition statement, list of artists, a little bit about the program, photographs from the year, student work in the exhibition. And then this is the catalog from that exhibition. And this is also, I personally think this is one of the best archives. I'm kind of old school. I love photo books and catalogs. But I just wanted to flip through this really quickly and show you how the content that we capture is organized and presented, if it will work with me. Try it smaller. Okay. This is overview pages of the activities and the different tours and workshops that we did with the students over the year. These are headshots of the students from that year. My statement, my assistant's statement. And then these images that you see are photographs that the arts educator assistant is tasked with capturing throughout the year, each and every program. This is a student profile page. So it's got their statement, their bio, and then high resolution images of their work. And students are all given a copy of this, and we print a short run copy of this. And we also have copies available in the gallery for view and stored just as an archive. And we take a series of overview shots, but also detailed shots. And students get a copy of the images that you see in the catalog itself. We share them digitally. So I'd say it's a pretty good system that's worked. And with that, I'm going to turn the screen and the mic over to my colleague, Phyllis, and she's going to share with you how we model, collaborate, and teach students the documentation and the archive process so that we're able to get the type of content that you see in the catalog and on the website, and that I hope to show you guys throughout my presentation. So thank you. I'm going to stop my share. Phyllis.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Amanda, for all of that information. My role now is to give you a little overview of what all of that preparation and work on our end would look like to a student. I did see some questions about how would all these platforms come together in the end, and I think that as I go through this part, I think it'll be a lot clearer. So first, we're just gonna look at this chart that has some of the things that we ask from students throughout the year. We have student artwork for works in progress, and in the spring, when we are working towards the final exhibition, we are also asking for statements, bios, and the artwork captions. We ask for headshots and images of the final artwork, of course. There are different medias that we ask from them. They are the students are the ones delivering the information to us. And we oftentimes ask them to upload all of this to Google Albums Classroom. And these are uploaded then to the Q website, catalog, and server. So it is really, really important that we get all of these items from them. And just gonna start, I'm gonna show you how we do that. So let's start with the artwork in progress. So before the pandemic, we were also asking students to upload works in process. And after lockdown, it became more valuable because students were able to connect and build friendships by looking at each other's work and commenting on their work. And we are a Q Team collective, so camaraderie is really valuable in our program. And even in isolation, we want to make sure that our students are talking to each other. And for many students, it is the only art class that they are taking. A lot of them don't have access to the arts at school, so we want to make sure that they are, talking to their peers and gleaning from their peers. We're also hoping that we can motivate students to continue making art during such a difficult time. And we do want to help students build better habits. So if we are asking for them to deliver photographs of their work throughout the semester, they kind of can't leave all of their work to the last day before it's due. So it helps them build better habits. There's also a lot of emphasis on idea building, sharing sketches and works that are not complete. I think that a lot of students in high school are so used to handing in work that is done, but we want to make sure that they understand this is about sharing ideas. And as long as they are respectful towards each other, there aren't that many limits to what they can make, and experimentation is always encouraged. So before they upload their work for us, we have to teach them how they would document the work to begin with, right? So we ask, why is it important to document artwork and to organize image files? And how can we photograph our work in the best way? So we pose a question in class. We always start in the classroom. We always start with explaining what it is we're doing and why it's important. We have the discussion to kind of, familiarize everybody with the idea. And sometimes they've already done it for social media. We did have a lot of students who were already doing it this year. Sorry, my street is really loud, so we're gonna have some noise every now and then. Sorry about that. But we also, so after we have our discussion, we teach them that it's important because if you are working with a client, they might need the photos again later on, and you want to be able to have them just as backup. Or someone might want an image from you for a publication or an exhibition. So I did see also in the polls that there were a lot of visual arts teachers, and I saw that there were a lot of theater teachers, which I thought was really cool. But I think that documenting work is really valuable throughout the different types of arts that we work in. And we use these slides to explain documenting work with a cell phone, because we want to keep things as simple as possible, since we are all at home and we don't, hopefully someone in the family has a smartphone, but we do want to keep things as simple as possible for our students. So these slides are on Instagram, so, really easy to access. It starts with 2D artworks. They talk about lighting. They talk about what kind of background to use when you're documenting a 2D piece. It moves on to 3D artworks. It even talks a little bit about taking videos. So we go through these images with them. And next, we talk about editing artworks. I also don't want to give the impression that we're teaching all of this at once. We are talking them through this week after week after week. We are making sure that they don't get overwhelmed with all this information. So maybe after talking about documenting the work, we are now moving on to editing the artwork and why it's important to edit the images. And of course, it's so that the photo can look like the original artwork as much as possible, and that the viewer won't get distracted from different shadows, weird lighting situations, or camera warps, right? We also note some free programs that students can use. And the most obvious one, I think, if you have an Apple phone, there is the Apple Photo Editor. There is Photoshop Express, Snapseed, PixArt, and GIMP. And now that you're done editing your image, you can prepare it so that you can submit it to a program. The first thing you should do is figure out what the program is looking for and what requirements it wants from you from these images. And we talk about what is a TIFF, a JPEG, a PNG, and what are the benefits of each. And how should your files be named, and what should the size of it be? And these are all just different weeks throughout the semester. So now that we have discussed all these steps to prepare an image, we are now ready to give them their first assignment that involves that. So this is a slide that we've shown in class. Amanda has already talked about this. We did our first critique this semester, but this is a slide that we showed in class. It contains what we want from them. We want 3 images, right? We would like for them to upload the images by this date onto this folder. We want them to be JPEGs, and please label them like this. So it always starts in the classroom. And then because we are in lockdown, it's super important to keep communication really open. So every week I will send out an email to the cohort with information on the next class, but also I will remind them like, hey, this is due. Here is the link in the email. You can click here to upload, and all the information is also uploaded onto Google Classroom. If you want to look at it and then upload from there, you can do that as well. So we are giving them a ton of different places to collect information. We are constantly talking to them and reminding them of what's to come, what's due, so there's no surprises. Okay. Ooh, let me go back. All right, so we are going to go, hold on 1 second, there we go. We're going to go check out this Google folder Google Photos folder that Amanda has already touched on. Sorry, 1 second, my computer is being really weird. So this is for our first critique, that the assignment where I already showed you the presentation slide on with the requirements and all that. So now students can find this in that email or on Google Classroom, and they can very easily upload by clicking this right here. They can even comment on each other's work, which I find really amazing because it's just another way for them to, get in touch with each other when we're all in isolation. And really quickly, I would like to show you how to create a Google Photos album if you would like to use it as a tool in your teaching. So here I am in the main page. I can go down to albums and I can click create an album on the upper right side. I'm going to add a title. I'm going to say, let's say November 2020. So as the facilitator, as a teacher, you probably don't want to add any images yet, right? You want your students to be adding images. So I won't add anything. I'm going to go back. And it's going to be right here for me in my albums tab. Now I need to add my students. So I'm going to click more options, this little corner right here. I see some people nodding. This is awesome. Okay, so then I can share album. And if I click create link, it's going to give me a link that I can copy and paste and write individual emails to people with this link, right? Or I can send this to my other email, and then that other person can join directly from here. Okay, so if we're sharing this PowerPoint after, so I do have the instructions here if you would like to go over it again to make your own album. Okay, so we are teaching students how to prepare images for our program, right? But at the same time, we would like for them to take these tools and apply it to other endeavors that they have after Q. So on the left is another slide that we've shown them. Real life examples. We have Young Arts, Slide Room, Scholastic Arts, which is, these are all pretty well-known programs. And we look at some of the requirements together. So on the right, we have the Scholastic Art Awards, and they can tell that this program wants something very different from what we want. But looking through these together, it helps them become more familiar with what another program might want. And I think earlier with Amanda's photos of that student who are alumni, who those two images, I think that was like them moving on beyond our program and using the tools that we gave them, which was really cool. Okay, so for the final exhibition, there are so many things due, and I think that from Amanda's perspective, you can kind of see that, you know, on our side, we had to provide so many platforms to make sure everything kind of came together. So in the students' perspective, we are asking them for these materials throughout the semester in the spring. So we are asking them for the artist portrait, biography, the statement. So yes, so the deliverables are due throughout the spring, so they're not being overwhelmed, which is really important also because we're, you know, in lockdown and things could be really difficult. And all of the PowerPoints, so we talk about this in class first, right? Using PowerPoints, what is a statement? What is a bio? And then we upload it onto Google Classroom with the deadlines, where to upload it, and the PowerPoint that we used. We also love Google Sheets. This is actually the first, this is that Google Sheet was in deadlines and materials to submit. So here we have like kind of a master list of everything that would be due that semester. We have the artist statement, biography, artist portrait, very clearly labeled with what it is exactly, what file it should be, where you can put it, and how you should format it, with the link so that everything is made very, very simple and very easy for them to access. Okay. And of course, we are also constantly emailing them. Just kidding. We're just emailing them once a week with due dates, just checking in with them, you know, making sure they're on track. They're going to be able to deliver everything on time. Really important because we need those things for our website and our exhibition. So on our side, we're trying to get all this information from them. So the statement, bios, and artwork captions are kind of what's due first. We like using Google Docs to gather this information from them. So in Google Classroom, there would be that individual link that opens up with instructions. In it, they're going to click and it's going to open up to a Google Docs form. So in the Google Docs form, this one here is the second draft of the statement. It has all the information it needs to write it, for them to write it. And when they click share, this information goes directly to Amanda and our Google Drives. So it's super convenient. All of them are listed in our Google Drives. And we also ask students to write artist statements and bios because we want them to be able to explain their choices of ideas, materials, and images with words. And it's a skill that, you know, professional artists have and are developing, right? And the captions. So like I said, this information, really important. We need it for the wall text, for the in-person show, and for the virtual exhibitions on exhibit. And we use Google Forms to gather all of this. So on Google Classroom, there are so many Google platforms right now, but on Google Classroom, there on the bottom left, you can see that the form is there linked. We also have the presentation we saw in class together linked, so that if someone was absent that day, or if someone needs a refresher, it's right there for them. And we also explained to students that what the caption is, right? It contains the name of the artist, the artwork, the date, the materials used, and it gives the viewer more context to understand the work. Okay, so this is what our caption form looks like. Once again, we're trying to make it as clear as possible for students because we're online and we want them to know what we're trying to teach them, right? So on the left is the caption for the Starry Night. And when they open up the caption form in Google Classroom, it first opens up to this example. So it's a reminder. And then we ask for student headshots, which is this one is pretty simple. You know, on Google Classroom, we have the instructions, we have where they can upload this information. And on the right, you can see that these images are the same images that we have on the CUE website. I think was one of the first few slides of this presentation. Okay, so finally, we got through the statements, we got through captions, we're doing great. And now we have to deliver the final series and artwork. We use Google Photos. Once again, we love Google Photos. Our program loves it. To gather student images for the final show. And we use them, the same ones go on to exhibit for the online exhibition. And on the left, you can see on the bottom, there is once again that Instagram slides page that I showed you a few slides ago. So we would have gone over this a long time ago, but this is still here so that they can review it in case someone just forgot how to do it. And also we have here the exhibit website so that students know, oh, this is what an online exhibition is going to be like, because I feel like this was a very new thing for so many of us. I'm not sure if they really knew much about it. So it's an opportunity for them to explore it first and know what we're getting into. So once all of the work has been uploaded, it's on the website, the exhibition is over, they have done all this work to create really great images of their art. What do we do now? We have to save this work, right? We have to archive it. So why is it important to archive our work, and what are some ways we can do it? We shared some options with our students. So there's Amazon Photo Storage, iCloud, Google Drive, and of course, archiving is based on need. So Amanda is a photographer and she loves Amazon Photo Storage and iCloud, but I am a painter, so I don't have quite as many images. It's just saved on my computer. Maybe that's not a good thing, but we both use external hard drives for backup. And very important, I think, to explain to students is, why would we buy iCloud? Why would we spend money on an external hard drive? And it's really important to explain to them that they are investments in your career and your future, especially if you continue working in the arts. And even though you are paying money for this subscription, it can help you make money as well, right? Great, okay. So it is, okay, so the two images on the right, it's my archiving process. Not super fancy. I mean, you should see Amanda's, hers is crazy. But what's important is that you create an archive process that makes most sense to you. So even though I go from 1 to 7 on the upper right screenshot, I don't care, I like it. But I do notice that, for both me and Amanda, we find it important to label the date, the file type, and the project name. And we encourage our students to save their images and label them so that they can find them again in the future, right? So that's the end of that. That was our last slide. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that was helpful. I know that was a lot of information, but hopefully things got clearer and clearer at the end.
Thank you. Thank you, Phyllis and Amanda, so much. So we still have about half an hour in this session, and I know I have saved the questions that have come in from the chat. So we have this time. If you have questions that you haven't posted in the chat yet, go ahead and post them in there. We will take as many as we can. First, I want to call on Diane, who's been waiting very patiently on her phone with her hand raised to ask a question. So Diane, are you able to unmute? There you are. Please ask your question.
Hi, Kinsey. Hello, everybody. You're doing a great job. I'm on phone, and I was wondering, Kinsey, if I could just email you my question. It might be easier. Maybe you could put it up on the chat for me, or if that's not possible, I'll just read what I've written.
Why don't you read what you've written, and I'll post it in the chat as you say it.
Sure. Okay, I tried to make this really brainy. My issue, what portion of your lecture would be relevant for me, given that I am an aspiring teaching artist versus an established teaching artist? I have no core curriculum or student body with which to communicate. Further, my medium is the spoken word. But does that make sense?
So I hate to ask a question with a question, but I'm going to be that person today. So are you asking us a question about seeking employment as a teaching artist and building a portfolio for that, or about the documentation process for you as a spoken word artist?
Well, frankly, I have a vision, but it's not defined yet and really clear. So I'm very much in a learning curve. And I've learned a lot just from listening. And it's basically, it's technical, but it's also very intuitive as well. It's just, you're doing a great job. But I would not be communicating with students or my audience. It might be a random audience here and there, or I might be creating a podcast or whatever I do. It's not going to be about the visual art, but about the spoken word, although there could be visuals in it as part of my presentation. You see, so it seems that your lecture seems very specific to visual artists, but I might be wrong. Maybe the takeaway is the same. Does that make sense?
So
if it doesn't make sense, I'll move on. That's okay.
No. I think there's a part of the, I'd like to connect what we just delivered in the presentation we delivered to a teaching artist or an artist educator that's working with spoken word artists. With spoken word, is it just oral spoken word? Is it the composition of it, or is it performance? Because if it's performance, then you'd want to capture video files and organize and store the video files in a way that works for you. If it's audio, then you'd want to capture MP3 files and then the audio of your students or your participants in a workshop performing it. If you know you're doing one-off workshops, then I would, in part of your advertisement, mention that you will be recording, and during the workshop, see if you're able to capture some of the work that comes out of it, so you have a snippet of what you've been able to do and facilitate as an educator.
I think I understand. So you're saying that it's still interactive in the same way, although the content is different. Meaning that if the people who are listening or attending whatever I'm presenting, have a response to give me for my comment and my input, it's important for me to archive that and perhaps share it globally with others. Is that what you're saying? It's the same kind of deal.
It's approaching your discipline and thinking, what can I save, what can I capture, and then organizing it in a way that's intuitive to you.
Wow,
Right. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Diane.
Learned a lot.
That's great to hear. I want to thank you for your question. I was so sorry to interrupt you, but we have a few more questions to get to. Actually, we have a lot of questions to get to. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get to all of them, but I did want to move on. This actually sort of ties to Diane's question a little bit, so I think that maybe you just answered it. And the question was, can you say again how to translate this for theater folks, maybe for written work, plays? Do you want to expand on that at all?
Sure. For theater folk, if it's also a matter of, do you already have documentation of performances, plays, readings that happened before the COVID shutdown that you want to organize and structure? Or if you're doing it currently right now, that's a different matter. That would be a matter of using Screencastify and recording the performances or the readings on Zoom in the best way that you can. It's also a matter of what is the essential component of what you're instructing that's important to capture so that the students have a record of the work that you do in the institutions, or if there are funders involved or whoever else is involved that is interested in the output and the deliverables of your program, what's the best way for you to share it with them depending on your medium.
Right, thank you.
Does that make sense for the theater? And then in terms of writing, I would say also Google Classroom assignments, organizing the files on Google Drive, because when you create an assignment on Google Classroom, it automatically puts all of those files into their own folder. So you have a record and archive of your student work that way. So that's a matter of more file management organization, because you are dealing more with doc files if you're a creative writing instructor. If you're doing sound-based work, DJing, music production, band, then that's determining whether you're able to capture audio files so that you have high quality audio of whatever sounds your young people are making, and if the performance component is necessary, or if you have old performance content that you want to archive and structure and share out.
All right, thank you for that. So moving on, let me find it. There was one question that was asked in the chat, and Amanda, you did address it, but I want to make sure that everyone saw it. The question was, is there a way to auto-populate an invitation to an entire class roster with Google Photos? And Amanda responded to that in the chat, but for people who didn't read it, she said, sadly, no. I have the whole cohort organized into a Google group, and I can't input the group, only individual email addresses. I'm not sure if you answered this question already, but one question in the chat was, does Q admin take all of the photos, or do students photograph their own work?
Students, both. Q admin hires professional photographers to photograph student work when it's on display in the gallery, but before that, students do photograph their own work and submit images of it to us.
Great. And connected to that, another question, which I think you partially just answered, was what are the tasks that you hire external professionals for to do the documentation? Is it just that, or are there other things that you hire external professionals for?
We hire, let me think. This catalog is published, we design the catalog in-house, and then it is published by an on-demand printer. So we do collaborate with other professionals to produce the digital and the print version of the catalog. Occasionally, for our benefit, we did, excuse me, a video testimonial that we work with a professional videographer for. But the student headshots are self-produced. The opening reception is photographed by a professional event photographer, because the staff is on hand. As an educator, I am an event photographer myself, but it'd be very crazy to host an event and photograph too. And manage students and parents and funders and saying thank you and congratulations. So we have a professional photographer photograph that, and I am advocating, aka trying to find the money for those of you that work in nonprofits understand what I mean, for a videographer to also capture video of the event. That's something that we all have the editing skills to edit in-house. So we usually work with people to document aspects of the program, but we will do, if it's design, the layout in-house, or if it's editing, the video editing in-house. And that's a way to get professional documentation and creative services and not break the bank.
All right. Another question from Carrie is, I know how to record a Zoom meeting, but is it possible to screen record a Google Meet session? Do you happen to know?
Off the top of my head, no, but if she drops her email address in, I can find out and get back to her. I think you can record it, but it is kind of clunky. But I want to check in on that because they just changed and overhaul the app, and I don't know what new bugs or patches or highlights they put on it yet. Thank you, Carrie. So I will follow up with her.
Great. I'm sorry, folks. I'm just trying to run through as many of these questions I can. The next that I see, what's your experience, either of you, with programs outside of Google for submitting photos and videos like Padlet?
I have never used Padlet before. I don't think I've ever heard of Padlet. Do you mean submitting photos for when working with students, or is it more personal? I'm not sure. Amanda, do you have an idea?
I have used Padlet, but more for workshops like this, working with teachers and adults. I think you can use Padlet. It is helpful for more of instruction, but because we do also run up against, and this is the thing about when you're working with photos and videos, for a lot of online submission services, there's a file maximum upload limit, and usually it's 25 to 30 megabytes. Most image file sizes are larger than that. Video is even bigger than that. So we try to stick to Google because we can seamlessly integrate it, but because we also don't run into file upload capacity limits or ceilings. And then most of the other programs, it's do you want it quick, cheap, or fast, as the old saying goes? Any program that's going to give you an unlimited file upload is going to cost money. So it's there available, but there's a price. Things that are free or have a temporary free subscription usually tend to have limits and maximums, but they are free. And then I know there's kind of issues with Google and corporate remounts and a lot of their intellectual property and privacy and just everything in the world, to be super frank. But right now, it's the best way to seamlessly integrate it at a relatively affordable cost. And it's also a large enough, too big to fail type company to where I know my students' data and our work isn't going to disappear. As a photographer, I remember let's say 2007 to 2015, wild west of cloud services that started up, sounded great, and then disappeared, and your data was gone, and you had to pay them for a DVD.
One thing also,
I'm aging myself here, so I prefer to keep very, very important, what I consider my students' intellectual property, somewhere where it is available to them and it is their own.
One thing I think I forgot to mention when I was showing everyone the Google Photos folder was that as we are critiquing, we are just going from one photo to the next, and we don't have to close one person's classroom folder, open up someone else's. So it really is so convenient if we're only meeting for 2 hours a week. I think that's partly why it's also our go-to.
All right. Related to uploading files to a Google album, someone said, this may be a silly question. There's no silly questions. Can folks, students and artists alike, upload to a specific Google album without things also going into their personal Google Drives?
Yes.
Excellent.
The album capacity limit counts against the account that created the album. So if you upload it, it's not going to affect your capacity because it's going into our account.
So you'll just want to upload directly to that
Yeah.
folder itself, not to your own, and then share it.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
From your computer to the folder. If you upload from your Google Drive to the folder, then yes, it will impact your Google Drive capacity. And then even that gets a little bit technical because there's certain, when you upload photos to Google Drive, there's certain settings you can use that will make them small enough so it doesn't count against your capacity. And then that's the rest of me is me being a photo geek, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right, I'm just looking through these last few questions. This one, I know you're both visual artists, so I'm not positive that you'll have an answer for this, but this question is, if you're gathering voice memos, how can you convert that to an MP3, like a file that you want to keep?
They're automatically saved as MP3s. That's the file format the voice memos are recorded in. You can change that in your file settings, but the default, I believe, is MP3. So it's automatically an MP3 that you can click the share button to. And depending on the apps that you have on your phone, you can upload. So I somehow got roped into incorporating music production one year into my class. So I know that you can upload it directly to Google Drive or Google Photos if you have the apps installed on your phone. And you can also upload it to your iCloud through your phone as well. And there's a note in the comments that wave settings are better because it's a higher fidelity sound. Absolutely agree with you, Eleanor. But MP3 files are smaller, so it's a matter of the storage capacity of your phone.
And Laura just asked, can video be embedded in the program you used for the exhibition catalog or only still images?
I believe video can be embedded, but that's an extra charge in a special account because, again, there's a cost when you get luxuries and extras with digital imaging and publishing.
All right, we have a question from Helen. How do you work through a shared nomenclature, parentheses, naming files and such?
I'm going to defer to Phyllis because Phyllis spoke to how we do it in her presentation.
The question is, how do we sort out all these different platforms? I'm sorry, say that. Can you say it?
The question was, how do you work through a shared nomenclature? And Helen, if you're still with us, you can expand on that question if you'd like.
I think that it does seem like there are a ton of platforms that we're using, but I think the most important thing is to keep organized and have like a master sheet, which for us would be that list on Google Classroom of where everything needs to go and where to find everything. So if you create that master sheet and you very clearly dictate where something is due and when it's due, I think that as long as it's clear enough for students to follow, it will actually seem in the end, you will be able to gather everything. It will seem clear in the end. I think that it might, for us, it works. Maybe for you only use 3 Google platforms or maybe even just the one Google platform. Yeah, I think the important thing too is to tailor it to the program that you're teaching.
So I just screen shared our program logistics sheet. And if you see under file naming instructions, if they are available, we will have the students and give them file naming instructions with their first name, last initial, and then the number. And this is the list of all of the different information that we collect from students, and then the file naming instructions for each due dates. And we share this also with the students. So
Right.
I actually set up the file nomenclature, and when students submit work, they always put their names on it so we know whose is whose, because I don't want to sort through DSJ 100, 200 JPEG like that. No. So we build that.
Sorry, Amanda. I was going to say, I wonder if Phyllis, if you could stop sharing your screen for a minute, that way Amanda's can pop up with that nomenclature.
Oh, I thought I was sharing it. Oh my God.
No, that's okay. I realized I thought it wasn't I don't know that it was sharing fully, so try that one more time.
Oh my God! Wow. Okay. That was, well, I can laugh at myself. That was funny to me. So yeah, artist statement. Even before we used Google Classroom, we had them share through Google Drive, and when they did share individual documents, we had them label all of them as you see in the file naming instructions column. And then this is a spreadsheet that we internally use to organize all of the materials for the final exhibition. So if it can be labeled, if it makes sense to label, we make them label it. And then I personally have photo editing programs that enable me to batch edit and change the names that I find very, very helpful. So if you are dealing with a lot of photo, video, images, Photo Mechanic, they have an educator's discount. It's normally like 200. You can get it for 25 if you can prove you work for an educational organization. Thank you. Oh, pet peeves.
Or are there trends that you notice that students in submitting things to look out for that have been pitfalls with students labeling or uploading?
Just getting them to turn it all in, like getting 25 people to turn something in on time in the correct format multiple times over like a 3-month period. That in and of itself, I would say it's just, yeah, it's difficult. That's why we are so organized and we have 25 ways to say the same thing. Repeating myself past like the 5th time. Phyllis?
It is definitely about hammering so that everyone can get everything in, especially since we're not seeing them. Pet peeve. I would say that is the one.
Thank you for the question, Helen. It is a difficult process to manage, but it's worth it. And it also helps. I mean, I do that in my own artwork, and it's a good way to create a portfolio for yourself as an educator.
All right. Well, we still have 8 minutes. So if anyone has another question, you can type it in the chat or feel free to come off of mute, ask your question aloud. And let's see, someone just asked, is it possible to share that spreadsheet to Amanda? Is that spreadsheet in the PowerPoint?
No, it's not. It's just I pulled it up when I heard the question because I figured it was a good way to show how we think about and organize and model it. I can share. I have to talk to Q because it's somewhat proprietary information on a sharing, like for me to give to somebody else. But it's I'm hoping I can find an older version that I'm happy to turn into a template so that you can get a sense of the structure, but it's not the current information that we're working with to split the difference.
In the presentation, there is a screenshot of a master list of the things that are due for the exhibit. So maybe, I don't know if that would work for you, that you can see when we send out the slides for everyone at the end.
Great. And just a reminder to everyone that this is being recorded and this video will be shared with you all as well. So if you'd like to just, scroll forward and find a piece that you wanted to revisit, you'll be able to do that as well next week. Let's see. We have one more question and then we'll close it out. I'm a teaching artist who guest teaches. How did you learn to use Google Classroom? Are there any video tutorials and is it free? Before you answer, I will say that Amanda, this is her second time doing a virtual event for us here at the Roundtable, and her first collaboration that she did was Google Classroom 101. That video is up on our website. If you'd like to check it out, it's in our video gallery, and it has a lot of resources with it as well. If there's anything y'all want to add to that, please do.
I was working with a classroom teacher that used it, and that was her process, and she was a veteran. And I, on a personal level, was like, no, I have to learn a whole nother program to do this residency. Oh my God. But it is proved very invaluable, and I'm glad that she made me learn it. And having to create assignments, and it's also because I primarily teach at the high school level, it's much harder to not know something or kind of not be up on the same page when you're teaching teenagers. So it was also, if I didn't want to get steamrolled in class, it made sense and it was in my interest to teach it. And that's just something specific to those of you that teach high school. I think everybody that's work with teens has a sense of what I mean by that. So it was also just staying up and realizing that technology is a part of education now.
All right, I see that Kim, thank you so much. She just put a link to our summer school 2020 website, which is where you can access the video gallery from that session, and any other sessions that you'd like to visit from that series. And I think that seems like it. So I just want to give a very, very big thank you so much to Amanda and Phyllis for this time and for sharing your expertise. If you have, I saw that you shared it at the end of your slide already, but if you have any social media handles, links, or contact information that you want to share, you can pop it in the chat. And thank you so much to everyone today for joining us. If you are able, please take a couple of minutes after this workshop to complete an event survey, which helps us evaluate our virtual events and helps us work on future programming. So I just popped a link to that survey in the chat there. If you did enjoy today's workshop, please consider making a donation or becoming a member of the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. Roundtable members support our ability to provide direct advocacy on behalf of the arts education field, quality professional development programming, and resource sharing opportunities. And for more information on the benefits of membership, to join our rosters, or to make a donation, you can visit any of these links here that I am sharing in the chat. If you are experiencing a financial barrier to becoming a Roundtable member due to the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, you can just please reach out to me, Kinsey Keck, the Programming and Membership Manager, to discuss a discounted membership rate for yourself or for your organization. And I'm just dropping my email address in the chat now. Please be sure to tune in next week as our Teaching Artists Tuesday series continues. On Tuesday, November 17th from 4 to 5:30, you can join us for Best Practices in Marketing for Artists in a Virtual World. In addition, we have several roundtable events coming up. So information on the Teaching Artists Tuesday series and those other upcoming events is going to be shared in the chat again right now. And I'll just remind you one more time, all of this information is coming to you in an email with all of these links as well. So don't fret about that. I think that's about it. So we're going to leave the call open for a few more minutes, and feel free to save the chat. And yes, thank you again, Phyllis, Amanda, everybody for being here. We really appreciate it. Have a great evening, everyone.